Шаббат шалом.
Shabbat Shalom.
Сегодня в недельной главе Торы по всему миру, во всех синагогах читается о том,
Today, in this Torah portion, is read all over the world the following: how the Lord spake to the people through Moses. We soon are going to build the tabernacle. Therefore, speak to the nation that they are to bring an offering. And the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle are very important because they are the place of the presence of God in the midst of His people. It is so important that the nation will bring everything necessary, gold, silver, silk, all the material. And today is a wonderful moment where you can speak about bringing offerings. That we need our service. And this is what I'm going to speak about today. Oh, this is not what I'm going to speak about today. I'm not talking about offerings, because this is already written in the weekly portion and you are able to read it. I would like for us to open chapter 17 in the book of Exodus, starting in the first verse. Exodus 17. Okay, we are reading verses 1 to 7.
Зачем ты вывел нас из Египта, уморить жаждою нас и детей наших, и стада наших? Моисей возопил Господу и сказал: что мне делать с народом этим? Еще немного и побьют меня камнями. И сказал Господь Моисею: пройди перед народом и возьми с собой некоторых из старейшин израильских, и жезл твой, которым ты ударил по воде, возьми в руку твою и пойди. Вот я стану пред тобою там на скале в Хариве, и ты ударишь в скалу, и пойдет из нее вода, и будет пить народ. И сделал так Моисей в глазах старейшин израильских. И нарек месту тому имя Мааса и Мериба, по причине укорения сынов Израилевых, и потому что они искушали Господа, говоря: есть ли Господь среди нас или нет?
Exodus chapter 17, verses 1 to 7. Then all the congregation of the sons of Israel journeyed by stages from the wilderness of Sin, according to the command of the Lord, and camped at Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore the people quarreled with Moses and said, give us water that we may drink. And Moses said to them, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord? But the people thirsted there for water, and they grumbled against Moses and said, why now have you brought us up from Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst? So Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, what shall I do with this people? A little more, and they will stone me. Then the Lord said to Moses, pass before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand your staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it, that the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. He placed the name Massa and Meribah because of the quarrel of the sons of Israel, and because they tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? You remember for sure of this story.
Das Volk Israels
The nation of Israel was living in Egypt.
lebte nicht besonders wohlhabend
It was not very
in Sklaverei.
living well. They were in
Das Volk wurde
slavery
dort getötet.
and they were killed
Und
there.
jetzt sind sie aus der Sklaverei
And
herausgezogen.
now they had come out of this slavery into liberty.
Jetzt wurden sie nicht mehr bedroht.
Now they were not threatened.
Не было воды.
Und in dieser Geschichte
And in
lesen wir,
this
dass sie ein
story,
Problem haben,
we
und
read
zwar,
that they
dass
had a
sie Wasser
problem,
hat.
which is they had no water.
Wenn ihr ein bisschen früher in den Text schaut,
If you have a look a little bit earlier into this text, and there was the very same problem. They did not have bread.
Немножко раньше. Там написано о том, что Бог дал ману.
und ein wenig früher in dem Text
And
steht
even a little
dass
bit
er
earlier in this
ihnen
text,
das Manna vom Himmel
that the Lord gave them this manna from heaven.
Also kurz vorher,
Just
bevor
short
diese Stelle
before
über die
this
gab es
thing
ein Wunder.
happened
Они только что
that we are reading,
с маной.
there was a miracle already.
Ein Manna-Wunder erlebt.
They just had experienced the manna miracle, and the Lord cared for them and gave them their daily bread.
Die Situation wiederholt sich.
And the situation repeats itself.
Его чуть не побили камнями.
Und leider wurde er fast
And unfortunately, almost Moses got killed or stoned. And what for?
weil er sie aus der Sklaverei
Because he had brought them out of slavery.
Und der Herr sagt, nimm deinen
And the
Stab,
Lord said, take your staff,
einen Stock,
staff,
Опирался.
auf
a rod,
den er sich sozusagen abgestützt hat.
that he, so to say, was leaning on. It was an interesting rod.
Насколько я не ошибаюсь, первый раз, когда он пришел к фараону.
Wenn ich mich nicht täusche, lesen wir
If
das
I'm
erste Mal
right,
über diesen Stock,
we read about this rod for the first time when Moses went to see Pharaoh for the very first time. And this was for me the greatest miracle.
alle Wahrsager haben sich
All soothsayers from Egypt had gathered, and Moses came.
Свой посох, жезл, палку на землю.
und jeder schmiss seinen Stock,
And everyone threw his rod on the floor.
und jeder dieser Stöcke hat sich
And all of these rods turned into snakes.
В Египте не были галлюцинации.
Man kann jetzt sagen, ja, es ist
You might say, yes, it's very hot in Egypt. At that time, probably they were having hallucinations, they were having a fever or so.
ihr wisst, dass wenn es so heiß ist und
You know, when it is that hot
Welle vom Boden
and when there is a heat wave coming from the floor, then there are these waves in the air.
vielleicht war es so heiß, dass es so
Probably it was that hot that these rods were winding on the floor. But then we have another problem.
Этот змей, палка от Моисея, он съел остальных.
Es steht nämlich geschrieben,
Because it is written that this rod, the staff of Moses, that had turned into a snake, ate all the other snakes,
Они имели эту силу.
or devoured up all the other snakes.
die ägyptischen Wahrsager hatten
These Egyptian soothsayers, they had the power to turn their rods into snakes.
Простер его на воду, на море, и оно расступилось.
der Stab, den Mosche hatte.
The staff of Moses,
Du hast ihn
it's
herausgestreckt zum
written
Wasser.
here
Es hat sich
that he stretched it forth upon the water and it divided itself.
Diese Geschichte kennt ihr auch gut und
You
ihr
know
habt
the
bestimmt
story well
Bilder im Kopf.
as well, and you might have different pictures in your head.
Geht mit seinem Stab fort durch
Moses
das Wasser,
is walking through the water with his rod, and all the people are following him.
И пойдет вода. Из камня пойдет вода.
und hier passiert das Gleiche.
And here the same happens. You take your staff
Und du schlägst auf,
and
schlägst
you
auf den Felsen und
hit
auf ihn wird Wasser.
the rock, and out of the rock water will flow.
Das hat er getan. Das
And this is what he did, and the people had water. So this is wonderful. So we continue reading.
vom 8. Vers bis Ende.
Reading verses 8
Амаликитяне
to the end, verse 16.
Моисей сказал Иисусу Навину: «Выбери нам мужей и пойди и сразись с амаликитянами. Завтра я стану на вершине холма, и жезл Божий будет в руке моей». И сделал Иисус, как сказал ему Моисей, и пошел сразиться с амаликитянами. А Моисей и Аарон и Хор зашли на вершину холма. И когда Моисей поднимал руки свои, одолевал Израиль, а когда опускал руки свои, одолевал Амалик. Но руки Моисеевы отяжелели. Тогда взяли камень и подложили под него, и он сел на нем. Аарон же и Хор поддерживали руки его, один с одной, а другой с другой стороны. И были руки его подняты до захождения солнца. И не изложил Иисус Амалика и народ его острием меча. И сказал Господь Моисею: «Напиши это для памяти в книгу и внуши Иисусу, что я совершенно изглажу память амаликитян из Поднебесной». И устроил Моисей жертвенник, и нарек имя ему Иегова Неси. Ибо сказал он: «Рука на престоле Господа, брань Господа против Амалика из рода в род».
Exodus chapter 17, verses 8 to 16. Then Amalek came and fought against Israel at Rephidim. So Moses said to Joshua, "Choose men for us and go out, fight against Amalek. Tomorrow I will station myself on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." Joshua did as Moses told him and fought against Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. So it came about when Moses held his hand up that Israel prevailed, and when he let his hand down, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were heavy. Then they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. And Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on one side and one on the other. Thus his hands were steady until the sun set. So Joshua overwhelmed Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write this in a book as a memorial and recite it to Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under heaven." Moses built an altar and named it, "The Lord is my banner." And he said, "The Lord has sworn, the Lord will have war against Amalek from generation to generation. When you read this story for the first time, then all of a sudden an Amalek appears and attacks the Jews. And once again, Moses took his staff, lifted up his hand, and they had the victory. You might not believe, but pretty soon we will gather here and remember Amalek. And you know why, don't you? Because we soon will celebrate Purim. And the evil Haman is from this people of Amalek. And you can do with this nation whatever you want, but the spirit of these people wanted to destroy Israel. And in this story we read how he wanted to destroy Israel. And literally on the 6th of March and 11th of March we are going to celebrate Purim. We're going to read the book of Esther, and we will remember the good and the evil ones. And this evil one did not even have any sleep because he hated Israel so much. But in this story here it is interesting that they went to war against Amalek, and just on the other side Moses was standing, lifting up his hands, And the nation, the people of Israel, is
И вот он
successful.
встал, он опускает руки вниз,
They have the victory.
Und als er dann erschöpft war und seine Hände
And
sinken
when he
ließ,
was fainting and his hands were going down, then Israel is on the side of the loser. But good that Moses had some helpers,
свой посох где-то в сторону,
und er hat seinen Stab nicht irgendwo neben sich hingelegt,
and he did not put his staff down just next to him, and did not run around to find a chair for him. So these two supported him.
haben einen Stein gebracht, auf den er
They
sich
brought
setzte.
him a stone where Moses could sit down,
Und sie haben seine
and
Hände gehalten und
they
gestützt, damit sie nicht sinken.
и вот так Моисей
held his hands, so and supported him.
целый день выдержали.
So Moses and his helpers
Поднимали
endured for the whole day.
Sie haben ihre Hände zum Herrn gehoben.
They had lifted up their hands to the
Er
Lord,
schenkte ihnen den Sieg.
and the Lord gave them the victory. This is wonderful.
Моисей, который поднимает руки к Богу, и Бог дает победу.
Wenn man so einen Moschee hat, der seine Hände
If you
zum
have
Herrn
such a Moses who is lifting up his hands toward the Lord, and you have the victory, this is wonderful, isn't it? Amen. And I'm going to tell you another story.
Она произошла очень давно,
Das ist eine Geschichte,
очень давно.
die vor langer,
This is a
langer Zeit
story
passiert ist.
that happened a long, long time ago.
Один молодой человек,
Es lebte einmal ein junger Mann oder Mensch,
I would start with once upon a time there was a young man living, a man,
ein junger Mann,
спасибо.
a young man, a young male.
nur sich sicher zu gehen.
Он еще не был женат,
Er war noch nicht verheiratet,
He was not yet married,
aber er war schon arbeitstätig.
but he was already busy working.
Und unter allem, was er getan hat,
And among everything he did, he had one task.
glauben, was für eine Aufgabe es
And you will never believe what kind of a task this was.
Er hatte die Aufgabe,
He had the
den
task
Tieren Namen zu geben.
to give names to the animals. He was a gardener.
ухаживая за садом,
Er musste sich den Garten kümmern
He had to take care of the garden,
ему всех животных,
und dabei brachte der Herr ihm alle Tiere.
and at that time the Lord brought to him all the animals, and he had to give names to all these animals.
может, ему помощник найдется.
Dabei haben sie noch geschaut, ob er nicht einen Helfer
And they were looking around if they could not find a helper for him amongst these animals. And you understand that I'm talking about Adam. And the Lord told him,
Da ist ein Baum, von dem isst du nicht.
there is a tree that you are not allowed to eat of.
Внимательно слушай сюда. Там должно было быть написано в тексте.
Ich würde mir wünschen, dass der Text
I would
hör mal jetzt wirklich her.
Серьезно.
Like if the text would sound like, well, now, listen. Put everything aside, put down your smartphone, everything, and look straight into my eyes.
Isst du nicht.
You don't eat, you're not going to eat from this tree. Repeat it.
Я ожидал бы такой разговор.
Ich hätte so ein Gespräch erwartet.
This is the kind of talk that I would have expected.
Давайте представим себе, что он так поговорил. Он говорит, посмотри ему в глаза, ты понял? Да, все хорошо, не ешь.
Lasst uns vorstellen, dieses Gespräch
Let us imagine that this conversation just happened like this. Okay, there is a tree, don't eat of it. And then the Lord gave him a wife made out of one of his ribs,
waren zu zweit.
and then they were two.
Интересно получилось.
Und es ist interessant gekommen.
And something interesting happened.
Es ist noch jemand entstanden.
Someone else appeared.
Именно к жене. Почему к жене?
Oder nicht entstanden. Es war noch jemand da. Und zwar der Satan. Der ist ausgerechnet
Someone,
zur Ehefrau gekommen. Ausgerechnet zu ihr.
Showed up and approached the wife. So why the wife? And he started to talk with her, and she started to talk to him. So they had a conversation. Did the Lord really say the truth? Well, I don't know. I think so. Probably yes.
И что произошло?
Und was ist dann geschehen?
And then what happened? she said, well, probably maybe we did not understand everything well, and she ate of the fruit. And she brought it as well to her husband, told him, eat. And he ate. And this is how they got trapped. A catastrophe. Eve, the wife, she was responsible. It was her fault because she followed Satan. A catastrophe. And the Lord comes to them and said, okay, you will be punished, and you will be punished. Both man, the woman, and Satan. But he also told them something else. There is a time coming, and the seed of the woman will trot on the feet of the head of the serpent, or the seed of the serpent. This is kind of a strange promise, and by the way, he told the woman that she will give birth and being in pain while doing so. I assume that before they never felt any pain. This is my opinion. I assume that they never had any toothache before. They never had any headache, any aches in the bones, and also no problem with the rain, because there was no rain yet. I assume that they didn't have pain because they had eaten too much greasy food. They only ate plants, vegetables, and assume because they didn't have any chocolate, they didn't have any toothache. And why is it that I'm saying all of this? When the Lord spoke to her, you will give birth in pain, and then she became pregnant. There was no preparation, no training courses for pregnant women. In this world, never before had anybody any birth pangs. She, for the first time, felt that something was moving in her womb. Nobody else in the world had felt this before. And I think that the first pain in this world was this birth pangs. What she heard was, in pain you will give birth. And what happened? Exactly this pain. The birth pangs came, birth came, she gave birth, and the cry came. I don't know what she was... Okay. And this child came to be born. Okay, Eve, yeah, she was crying out, not for her mom, because she didn't have any mom. And to this was given to touch the spiritual world. She touched the spiritual world when she started talking to Satan. Then she was told, you will give birth in pain, and this is exactly what happened. But she was told as well that from the seed of the woman, someone will be born who will defeat Satan. And then this child was born into this world. And what does she say?
Ich habe den Menschen vom Herrn empfangen.
I have received this man from the Lord. She really believed that this was the Messiah. She lifted up this baby boy and said, "This is the Messiah. This is the one that was promised to me. He told me that I will give birth in pain, but he also said that from the woman someone will come who will defeat Satan." Then another child was born, 2 brothers, and they grew up and they brought sacrifices to the Lord. One brought from his animals, and the other one brought offerings from the field, from the plants. And the Lord preferred the offerings from the animals. And the Lord said, "What your brother had brought, I prefer. I like better." So these 2 children, they were not spoiled because of internet. They didn't have a bad education. They didn't have bad friends. They didn't drink in the courtroom. They didn't smoke. There were no drugs. They were well educated. But one brother kills the other. And the most interesting thing is the one who was supposed to be the Messiah kills his brother. The one who was supposed to be the Messiah is a murderer of his brother. The one who was expected to kill Satan. He became someone through whom Satan was acting. And after a while, another child was born into this family called Seth. This was his name, Seth. By the way, who gave the names to the children? It was the wife. It is written that Eve gave the names. For me, this family is quite interesting. The husband is working. He gave the names to all the animals, but to the children, the wife is giving the names. I exhort you to read the first chapters in the first book of Moses in Genesis several times. Eve is kind of an anti-hero, but the way how she is living and what kind of revelation from the spiritual world she receives is quite interesting. It is interesting because it's also passed on to other women. Maybe it is that women or the wives are not always right, but as for the spiritual perception in this world, both men and women have different sensations. In this story, it was not that Eve was dropped.
aber sie hat für etwas gekämpft.
She wasn't right, but she fought for something. She did not give up on what the Lord had promised to her and what the Lord had given to her. She, in her heart, she stuck to the Word of God.
Wir haben über Moshe gelesen,
We read about Moses,
der zu Zeiten des Krieges in Israel
who
seine Arme hob.
at the time of a war with Israel lifted up his hands or was at the other side, not because he was tired or because he had given up. And in the days that we experience war in Europe and many lift up their hands towards heaven, the majority of those are women.
In diesem Jahr ist ein Wunder geschehen.
And in this year, a miracle happened.
Ich habe gestern im Internet kurz eine Sendung mir angeschaut.
Yesterday, I watched a broadcast on the internet, a short broadcast. A Russian-speaking person said,
Oder ein Mann, der gesagt, der selbst
a man
russische Staatsbürgerschaft hat,
who has the Russian citizenship, he's a Jew,
lebt weder in der Ukraine noch
and he neither lives in the Ukraine nor in Russia. He supports the Ukraine. He's not a believer.
konnte sich nicht zurückhalten und hat gesagt,
And he could not hold back. And he said, understand, this is a miracle. And this unbelieving person, this unbeliever says, continues to say,
man kann doch sehen, dass der Herr der Ukraine hilft.
you can see that the Lord is helping the Ukraine. Every unbeliever can see this.
Und das, was wir sehen, was in dieser Welt geschieht,
And what we see, what's going on in this world, there are many good things.
dank der Gebete.
And this is only thanks to the prayers.
Diejenigen, die ihre Hände erheben zum
Thanks to those who are lifting up their hands towards the Lord, that this war will come to an end,
dieses Töten auf,
that this killing will stop,
dass die Vergewaltigung auf,
that this raping will stop,
dass die Quälerei, die
that
Kinderquälerei aufhört.
the tormenting of children will stop. And many are praying for this in the Ukraine, in Russia, in Europe, and all over the world.
Viele Frauen beten.
Many women are praying for that.
Я был сейчас на встрече пасторов в Берлине на этой неделе.
Als ich jetzt auf diesem Pastorentreffen in Berlin war diese Woche,
I was at a meeting of pastors this week here in Berlin, and it was a breakfast for pastors and a prayer breakfast,
Männer.
and there were mainly men.
Wir wissen doch selbst,
Молитвенное служение
But we do know
в основном лежит
that the prayer service
hauptsächlich auf den Schultern der Frauen,
mainly rests on the shoulders of women.
bei uns hier in der Gemeinde.
And this is the same here for us in our congregation.
Jeden Dienstag hier
Every Tuesday we have a prayer service, prayer meeting. Well, yes, men are coming as well. They
и это хорошо.
come every now and then, and this is good.
Которые проводят это служение и молятся здесь регулярно.
aber hauptsächlich
But
sind es Frauen,
mainly
die Gottesdienst führen, Gebetsdienst.
it is
Я хотел бы вас
women that hold this prayer service.
Ich möchte euch ermutigen, auch
And I want to encourage you
5 часов.
to show up once on a Tuesday at 5 p.m. You are more than welcome.
У нас в общине мы хотели бы, чтобы мы друг с другом объединились в наших усилиях.
bezüglich des Gebetsdienstes in unserer
As for the prayer service in our congregation,
Gemeinde
our desire is that we gather or that we unite in strength. We know that each and every one has his, her prayer time, which is good.
Und wir werden dafür sorgen, dass jeder
And
Einzelne auch von den aktuellen Gebetsanliegen Bescheid weiß.
we will care that everyone will have the information about what's going on in the prayer service. Like with Moses, we want to support one another in prayer. But about this we will talk another time.
Еще одно место.
Ich möchte mit euch noch eine Stelle lesen.
I would like to read with you another passage from the Gospel of Luke,
Kapitel 22.
Luke chapter 22.
Евангелие от Луки, 22 глава, с 31 стиха.
Lukas Evangelium,
Gospel of Luke,
22,
chapter 22,
31. Vers an.
beginning in verse 31.
Иешуа общается со своими учениками.
Yeshua spricht mit seinen Jüngern.
Yeshua is talking to and with his disciples,
Und jetzt unterhält er sich mit Petrus.
and now he's talking with Peter.
Евангелие от Луки, 22 глава, с 31 стиха.
Lukas Evangelium, Kapitel
Gospel of Luke, chapter 22, verse 31.
И сказал Господь: Шимон, Шимон, вот, сатана просил, чтобы сеять вас, как пшеницу. Но я молился о тебе, чтобы не оскудела вера твоя, и ты, некогда обратившись, утверди братьев твоих. Он отвечал ему: Господи, с тобою я готов и в темницу, и на смерть идти. Но он сказал: говорю тебе, Петр, не пропоет петух сегодня, как ты трижды отречешься, что не знаешь меня.
bis einschließlich 34.
31 to 34. But the Lord said, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan has demanded to sift you like wheat, but I have prayed for you that your faith may not fail, and you, when once you have turned again, strengthen your brothers. But he said to him, Lord, with you I am ready to go both to prison and to death. And he said, I say to you, Peter, the rooster will not crow today until you have denied 3 times that you know me.
Mosche erhob seine Hände.
Moses lifted
Они
up
все
his
втроем
hands.
Израиль могли поднимать руки.
Sie haben zu dritt die Hände gehoben.
They were actually 3 holding up his hands.
Господь ответил и давал победу.
Oder sie konnten so viel die Hände heben, wie sie wollen, aber der Herr ist es, der den Sieg gibt.
So they could hold up their hands as much as they wanted, but it was the Lord who gave the victory. We can pray,
Твердая уверенность в том, что Он ответит.
Aber wir brauchen
but we also need
die feste Sicherheit darin,
the
dass er antworten wird.
the assurance, the solid assurance that He will answer. And where do we get this assurance?
Sagt, wenn ihr zu mir kommen werdet,
He said, if you will come to me, I will hear you.
was bedeutet zu mir kommen?
What does it mean to come to Him?
Zu Yeshua zu kommen.
What does it mean coming to Yeshua? And the first thing you can start with is
Zu sagen, es
to
tut mir
say,
leid.
I'm sorry.
В этом отрывке, который мы прочитали в Евангелии от Луки,
In diesem Abschnitt aus dem Lukas
In this passage in the Gospel of Luke,
Петр даже не подозревал,
hat Petrus nicht einmal geahnt,
Peter did not even think
dass irgendwo sein Schicksal gerade bestimmt wird.
that somehow, somewhere, his fate was to be determined,
Dass Satan zu Yeshua kommt und sagt,
that Satan came to Yeshua
lasst uns
saying,
sie sichten wie Weizen.
let us sift them like wheat. And what does it mean?
Die einen von den anderen zu trennen.
To separate
Was
the
bedeutet
one from the others. And what does that mean?
von ihnen zu töten?
To kill one part of them.
Ihr erinnert euch, das war ähnlich wie mit Hiob.
You remember, it was similar to Hiob.
Er hat gelebt
A righteous one, a saint, was living,
für sein Schicksal bestimmt.
and somewhere in heaven his fate was determined, and this did not have anything to do with him. It was in the heaven that Satan came to the Lord saying, "Give Job to me." And he said to Satan, "You can do all evil to him, that his houses will burn down, that his children might die, that he might even become sick, but do not touch his soul." And all of the book of Job is why for, what for. Throughout all of the book, you ask, what for? On every page, he's asking, what for? And at the end, he really bowed down and said, "Forgive me." So when you come to the Lord and you start praying, I want to give you a thought. This is like my advice. Start quietly with "forgive me," and you don't have to say more. That's simple. I give you the advice that before you come to the prayer meeting on Tuesday, take the time or find the time for yourself to pray to the Lord alone, to pray to Him one-to-one. And then you can come here to this prayer meeting. Then we can support one another, our families, the congregation, lifting up our hands. And I want to give you one hope out of this Gospel of Luke, because there, in the Gospel of Luke, it is written, Yeshua is praying for us. It is written that clearly. He prays for us, for each and every one of us. I can say, He prays for you. There is hope for you. You are alive because He prays for you. And you will live. You will pray because He prays for you. And one day, it will touch your heart. And you will see His work in your life. Do you remember that our weekly portion that we started reading this morning with that we are to bring offerings? And it is good to talk about bringing an offering if you believe. If you believe in the Lord, of whom you believe that He is giving life and everlasting life, of whom you know that not only you is approaching Him, but that you also know that you are important for Him, because He is praying for you. And He gave His life to redeem you. And no Satan can destroy you. Therefore, for all of us, the prayer is that we will see more of the working of God's Spirit in our lives. The victory that was given to Israel through Moses. This was the victory of the Spirit of God over the spirit of Satan. What Eve wanted to see. She wanted to see the Redeemer. This is given to us today because we know the Redeemer. We know the woman through whom the Messiah truly came into this world. And we know the Redeemer,
Поэтому я хотел бы
Yeshua.
вас вдохновить в ваших молитвах.
Deswegen möchte ich euch
Therefore, I
ermutigen,
would like to encourage you,
Не пускайте руки.
hebt oder lasst eure Hände nicht sinken.
do not let your hands sink
Vielleicht habt
in
ihr
your
die Antwort
prayers.
nicht heute bekommen.
Maybe you did not receive the answer today,
Да будет воля.
but you
Möge
pray,
dein Wille geschehen, sagt
you pray,
Молитесь вы так.
your will be done.
Да будет воля
Is
твоя.
this what you say? Your will be done.
Dann vertraut darauf,
Then
dass sein Wille
trust
geschieht.
that His will be done.
Sein Wille wird geschehen.
His
У нас
will
часто проблема с
will
тем,
be
что
done.
вот он сейчас не делает так, как мы хотим.
Wir haben oft das Problem, dass,
Often we have the
Не
problem
делает так, как
dass
мы
der
хотим.
Herr nicht so
that
handelt,
the
wie
Lord
es er
does not act like or how we would like Him to act.
Vielleicht sollten wir uns einfach still hinsetzen.
Perhaps we should just sit down quietly and listen to His voice, and I'm pretty sure that He will answer,
Сегодня
Und ihr werdet wissen,
and
was
you will
sein
know
Wille ist
what
für euch
His
und für den heutigen
will
Tag.
is for you for this particular
Ohne
day.
Zweifel weiß ich, dass er lebendig ist und allmächtig.
Without doubt, I know that He is almighty and all-knowing.
So war das in meinem Leben und so kenne ich auch andere Menschen.
This is how it was in my life, and I know other people that were asking themselves for a long time, like, why? But do not let your hands sink.
Jedem Einzelnen antworten.
He will answer to every individual,
каждого из вас.
Und er wird seinen
And
Weg und seinen
will-
Plan für jeden Einzelnen offenlegen.
will reveal the way and the path for each and every one.
Иешуа сказал,
And once again, in the Gospel of Luke, where Yeshua says, I am praying for you. Amen.
שיר, 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 שיר לאדוני. שיר, 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 שיר לאדוני. שיר לאדוני, שיר שחדש. שיר, 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 שיר לאדוני.